Growing up, I was a fairly normal Canadian kid. I went to school, I played hockey, and then I'd go home and play video games. I started gaming when I was 11 years old, and initially it was just a fun way to connect with my cousin and just to kind of relax after going to school and playing hockey. When I was 13, I began to experience a lot of bullying, and that bullying led me to want to escape, and so I escaped into gaming. Gaming was a place where I could play for hours and hours and not really have to think about anything else. I ended up actually dropping out of high school. I never graduated, never went to college. And I was actually gaming up to 16 hours a day living in my parents' basement. My parents said if you're not going to go to school, then you had to get a job. And so I actually started to pretend to have jobs and deceive my family. Eventually, as much as gaming allowed me to escape, it didn't actually fix any of my problems. And I got to a point where I wrote a suicide note. And it was that night when I realized I needed to make a change. Fortunately, that night, I was able to talk to my father and ask him to help me find a counselor. Of course, he said yes. And this counselor really helped me begin to turn things around. The biggest change that I made was a commitment that if I wasn't going to end my life, I was going to do the complete opposite, which was to truly try to live my life to the fullest, to realize my potential. I was always curious what would happen if I took 16 hours a day I was putting into gaming and put it into other goals and dreams I had. What could I achieve? What would be possible? I decided to quit gaming, and initially that was just cold turkey. And I found different activities to do and started working with this counselor and finding new friends and really just had a strong commitment to not play. At one point, I decided to actually Google, how to quit gaming. And the answers I found were things that I just knew weren't really helpful. They were things like hang out with your friends when all your friends are gamers, or just study more when the whole reason I was gaming was to avoid studying. And I knew that there were people out there who were searching for help who weren't finding the answers they needed. And so I decided to share my story after I quit for about 2 years. And I just shared kind of that I was someone who struggled with this. I had learned a lot about being able to move forward with it and really just my story. And I began to hear from tens of thousands of people all over the world. And they were from 95 different countries. They were just like me, people who really wanted to quit gaming but were struggling to. And I would just always kind of email them back and share any insight that I had. Video game addiction is officially recognized by the World Health Organization. It's called gaming disorder, and it's classified by impaired control over gaming, gaming taking precedence over other interests and activities, and continuing to game despite the occurrence of negative impact. And it's really that last criteria that is the distinction between a gaming hobby and a gaming addiction. If you continue to game even though your life is being destroyed, if you're losing your job, if you're dropping out of school, if you're losing relationships, your health is really having a big impact, and you're continuing to game despite that, that would be where more problematic use would come into the equation instead of just a gaming hobby. If you're gaming as just fun, it's casual, you're still doing your homework, you're still engaging with friends and family, then you probably don't have a gaming problem. But gaming addiction happens generally because gaming fulfills two different functions. The first is the emotional needs that gaming fulfills. It allows you to escape. It allows you to socially connect. It allows you to feel a sense of progress in your life. And it allows you to feel a sense of purpose. And that combination of emotional needs is very potent. There aren't a lot of other activities that you can get all those sorts of needs met in one activity that you can also do for 15 hours straight. Which brings me to the other side of the equation, which is the hyper-stimulation that you get in a video game. You're fully in the zone, you're in flow state, and you can play for 15 hours straight, not even really think about it. That combination is really potent, and that's how games can keep you hooked and keep you spending money. There are a few alarming trends for me about where gaming is going. The first is that when the iPhone came out and the App Store was released, that introduced mobile gaming, which completely changed the business models of how games end up actually making money. Games went from traditionally being a one-time purchase to being generally free to play with things like in-app purchases, microtransactions, and loot boxes, which are a type of mystery box that a lot of researchers now coming out are linked to problem gambling. But the key is that gaming has changed. Prior to the internet, games weren't online, they weren't multiplayer games, they were just more single-player, story-based games. And then we had online multiplayer games that brought a lot of competition, and now mobile gaming. And so gaming is a community, it's a culture, it's something where you feel like you belong. It's a place where every different type of gamer can find something that they enjoy doing, a different type of game they play, or a different community. And especially because games have been under attack for a long time, especially around the violence in video game conversation, gamers feel very defensive. They feel like people in society don't really understand why they're so passionate about their games. If you just think about the stereotype of a gamer, they're a loser, they're a nerd, they're someone who's wasting all their potential. Why do you play all these video games? Those aren't your real friends. And that's created a lot of stigma and a lot of shame. And it's created an us versus them mentality where gamers are around a group of people who really understand them, who accept them, and society doesn't. And this video game addiction conversation then gets triggered around it because gamers feel like, again, they're under attack when they're not under attack. We're just here to try to help people who need help and allow all the rest of the gamers to be able to game in peace. But as we go forward, looking at the trend of integrating gambling-like mechanics into games and esports where it's a competitive-based gameplay now, I think those are some alarming trends that we want to be paying attention to. When you want to quit gaming, there are a couple key steps that you need to take. The first is you want to quit gaming for 90 days. 90 days gives you a good amount of time to experience what life is like without gaming. Especially if you've been gaming since you were very young, you may not actually know what life is like without it. After 90 days, you get to choose whether you go back to it, whether you try to play in moderation, or whether you continue to quit for good. Ultimately, that choice is yours. But giving yourself 90 days gives yourself a good contrast, and that's a good start. Next, you need to find replacement activities. Find a new skill to develop, like learning a new programming language, learning to code, maybe graphic design, starting a business, playing basketball. You also want to find something to do when you're at home and tired and bored from the day. So reading, listening to podcasts, cooking, talking to friends or family. You need to find new ways to relax and to be at home. Ideally, that's not just browsing the internet or watching Netflix. Next, you want to structure your day. Use a daily calendar or an agenda, or maybe even use a whiteboard. But identify the time in your day that you have, especially as your free time. It's going to school and then going to work, but then what else are you going to do for the day? How are you going to be productive? And being able to define that time will really help you a lot. And finally, you want to find a support group, whether that's a group like Game Quitters Online, or CGAA, or Organon, or just speaking to friends and family, or any peer support group in person, working with a counselor. You want to build a support system around you to be able to really hold you accountable, to help you through any different challenges that you're experiencing, and ultimately to just be there to help in any way that they can. If there was one message that I had for anybody watching, if you struggle with a gaming addiction or you struggle with gaming and you want to quit, know that you're not alone. Not only have I been able to turn my life around, but I know so many other people who have as well. Please ask for help. Know we're in this together, and life is worth fighting for.